So all being well, we won't have any more and we can continue as normal. I'm here to talk to you about the spiritual and character development pillar of the Academy. Why do we have a spiritual and character development pillar? Well, because the founder of the Academy, Dr. Sidney Smythe, was an Episcopal priest, and he wasn't interested in just educating the minds of his students. He saw character as the sum of the whole person. So he took a holistic approach and wanted to challenge his students to grow and mature mentally, physically, and spiritually. Hence the school motto, work hard, play hard, pray hard. And that's been the focus of the Academy ever since the beginning. Now, the school is unashamedly has been built on a Christian foundation, but students are not required to sign off on any particular religious beliefs if they wish to attend here. For those who arrive professing to have a faith of one form or another, my desire as chaplain is to get them to think. Are they just giving a mental nod to a belief system that they were raised with, or do they understand what they believe and why they believe it? Have they done their homework, so to speak, and wrestled with issues of faith, how it's meant to be worked out in their lives? Are they asking the right questions? Who am I? Why am I here? How do I explain the human condition? Where am I going? Those are the big questions of life. They're issues that deserve to be wrestled with and given serious thought. For those who arrive on campus who claim to have no faith, well, that's fine. I'm not here to try and force any particular belief system upon them. But my job with them is the same as the first group, is to get them to think. You see, have they thought through the consequences for life of saying that they have no faith? They have no outside authority to which to appeal for morals or values. On what grounds then do they decide what's right and what's wrong? From where do they draw their values? Why should anybody accept the values that they hold? How do they treat someone who holds a completely different set of values from them? You get the idea. Ultimately, my aim as chaplain is really just to get my foot in the door, so to speak, so that none of the students close that door completely on being willing to talk and think about issues of faith and belief, deciding that they've learned everything they need to know from Family Guy and The Simpsons. So if they leave the Academy with that door still open, so that they are open to discussion, I feel like I've done my job. See, I'm convinced that what we believe is the most important thing about us, because our belief shapes and informs our actions. In other words, what we believe reveals itself through the way that we behave. Not what we say we believe. We can say we believe all kinds of nonsense, but what we actually believe. And there's a difference. I may say I believe we should treat one another with respect and dignity. But if I'm a student here and I quite happily go into a fellow student's room and steal their stuff, then I reveal I don't actually believe what I say I believe about respecting others at all. And that brings us to character, which is why these two things are linked together. This spiritual and character development. They go together. And character is what I primarily talk about in chapel at the weekly service. Even though I often springboard from scripture, from the Bible, it's character that's on the agenda. See, character is not genetic. It's learned behavior. And good character is essential for good leadership. So I try and make the link between the two. I explore individual character traits. I talk about how they're developed, why they're important, and the impact that the myriad of tiny decisions we make every day, how they impact our life and our behavior. Because character isn't just something you wake up one day and decide, well, this is who I'm going to be. It's the tiny choices on a day-to-day basis that creates the character that we possess. Once a month in chapel we offer a Mass or communion, but again, this is not forced on the students either. Attendance in chapel may be mandatory, but only those who want to participate take part in Mass or communion. So moving on, another part of the spiritual and character development pillar is building community here on campus. And last year we introduced what we called GPS groups. At the beginning of the year, all the faculty and staff and the students were divided into small groups of about 10 to 12, which met every Tuesday during second mess to eat and to talk together. We wanted to create an environment that would help promote more meaningful relationships between faculty, staff, and students, and help build a stronger, a kinder, friendlier community. But also to provide the students with a setting in which we could discuss important issues that were related to life outside of the classroom. We called this initiative GPS, which stands for Global Positioning System, because finding out where we are, where we want to go, and how we get there is exactly what we wanted the students to discuss and explore in the small groups. They were arranged by grade level, and we spent a month on each of the topics from Stephen Covey's very popular book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So we had 3 or 4 sessions for most of the different topics, being be proactive, which meant taking responsibility for your life. So we talked about responsibility. Beginning with the end in mind, controlling your destiny. Again, back to the choices we make, which lead to consequences, and we get to control that. Putting first things first, focusing on the important and not just on the urgent, because it's very easy, especially for teenagers, to leave everything to the last second, and then it becomes a crisis. Well, if this is important, you don't have to wait till it becomes a crisis to deal with it. Think win-win was the next one. Finding a solution that's mutually beneficial when we have differences, which living in community, of course, come up all the time. Seeking to understand before being understood, which comes down to listening before we talk. And then learning to synergize, which is about creative cooperation. So we talked about those things as the groups. There were some teething problems, but they were mostly around trying to get the food to the students and have enough of it and it be warm and so forth. But I think we ironed that out. And for pretty much everybody, I would say that it was a very positive experience. We hope to do something very similar next year, but we'll develop and use different material for the groups then. And lastly, the final part of my role, really as chaplain, is to provide pastoral care and support, not just for the students and cadets, but for the faculty and staff as well. Chaplain is really a pastor without a congregation, or at least a regular congregation. So I view basically everybody on campus as my congregation, because whether they work here or board here or just come in for the day, life goes on for everybody. Pets die, grandparents get sick, parents get divorced. There's life that goes on, and I make myself available to talk and to listen and to help students and staff as they process whatever it is that they may be going through, and I try to help them find and navigate their way forward. So those are the 3 main roles that I have as chaplain for the spiritual and character development pillar. I consider an honor to work here and to serve this community, and this is my 16th year, so I'm very grateful to have been able to do it for as long as I have. So that's basically my spiel. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, now would be the time. And I've got Paul sitting in front of me, and so he's going to tell me if there's any questions on the computer.
There are not any questions at this point.
All right.
So let's just give it another little bit.
All right.
While we're waiting for a potential question, I would like to promote that tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. you can come right back on Facebook here, and there will be a virtual open house where you get to meet the admissions team, and we'll go through the application process and the history of St. John's and so forth. So join us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for that. I'm not seeing any questions popping up here, Paul. So
okay.
if you wanna sign off, that would be great.
All right. Well, look forward to seeing some of you this fall. We hope and anticipate everything will be up and running again. And I look forward to being here to spend it with you. Thank you very much.